3, 4, 5, and 6 really are under the personnel category. You see there's a little bit of a drop-off after that, but the predominant answer was uniform in that people reduced capital outlay and went to their employee base to save money. So this is a lead into the next slide, which is your biggest future concerns, your biggest future, you could say program concerns, or you could say your biggest future FY11 expenditure concerns. Again, education is number one. Let me go back if I may, I apologize. The previous slide about how you managed FY10. Look at the bottom ranking, reduce education funding. That was one of the lowest response rates for managing to balance the FY10 budget. In other words, education was protected essentially by local governments. Generic and an overstatement, but for purposes of illustration. Local governments protected education funding in 10. When we go to 11, education goes from the bottom, where it's been protected, to the top of the concern. And of course the question is, how do you protect? Can you protect? And quite honestly, should you protect education in 11? And then you see a corresponding relationship to the previous actions of FY10 and budget balancing strategies, including dealing with capital outlay, personnel compensation, personnel benefits. This slide is a mixture of survey result information and, again, historical data. And I apologize if it's difficult to see. It's entitled Sources of Funds for K-12 Expenditures Projected 9 to 12. Again, if you draw an axis at the end of the slide in the 2008-2009 area, a vertical line through the 8 axis. The information to the right is extrapolated from the surveys and also based on revenue projections that Jim Regenball is doing for us. The trend here is, even though it's more than line, and it carries out to 2012, even though many localities will have to reduce education expenditures in 11 and 12, overall, we will still be providing more funding for education than the state. And the state is not, ladies and gentlemen, not a big surprise here, being a reliable funding partner. The bottom line, the third line, is denoting the federal stimulus funding and the big jump in federal dollars as a result of stimulus. The last couple of slides are highlights of the state budget problem. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because they're not conducive for you to examine from where you're sitting. But this slide is called FY10 State Budget Cuts. It captures the major categories of state aid to localities. The first bar on the left, original general fund appropriation, are the dollars that were appropriated by the General Assembly and Governor Kane in the spring. The second column, current general fund appropriations, are the dollars after the Governor's September FY10 budget cuts. So again, first column, the adopted budget in the spring. Second column, where we are today, literally where we are today with revenues. Third column shows the change. K through 12 has been reduced, state funding has been reduced by more than 13%. No change in car tax. Compensation board has been cut by 10%. And I know that's odd because in some offices, treasurers and commissioners have been cut by 17% effectively. But there's an averaging out because of reduced cuts to sheriffs. Comprehensive Services Act reduced by almost 14%. Community Services Board greater than 11%. 599 is aid to localities with police departments, more than 10%. So the difficulty we have here is that our governor often says he's held public education harmless. And I think what he really means is he's done the best he can to hold public education harmless. Because as you know, when the state changes its revenue projections and has to revise projections downward because of reduction in growth or loss of sales and use tax, the state has to make an automatic adjustment in public education funding. And those are technical adjustments. So when he says he's tried to hold education harmless, I think what he means he's tried to hold the policies harmless. The bad news is, and he's told the leadership of VACo and VML this briefly a month ago, he can't hold education harmless in his proposed biennial budget that he'll propose in December. And just, I think many of you know this, but the outgoing governor introduces a new biennial budget less than 30 days before he or she leaves office. And the new governor will offer amendments to the old governor's budget, and of course the General Assembly will wreak havoc with the budget. This is, just making sure you all are awake. This is Jim Regenball's estimate of the next biennial shortfall. He's projecting the state budget shortfall to be greater than $3 billion. And here's why. As Rick Brown explained yesterday, state revenues are down. What Jim has modeled here is level funding for particular programs, with two exceptions. Level funding 10 to 11 against stated revenues to determine that we have greater than a $3 billion shortfall. And the really sad news is that's a conservative estimate for this reason. He assumes that the state will re-benchmark public education funding for just under $200 million. And the state, as Rick Brown said yesterday, probably will re-benchmark because that's a statutory obligation. But that doesn't mean that they won't cut local governments in other categories of education. So it will reduce education funding. So he's actually assuming a modest growth rate in education, and that's not going to happen. And then second, he's assuming only a 7% growth in Medicaid funding for 11. And I think he would be the first to tell you that that's conservative as well. So the shortfall could well be in excess of $3.5 billion. And ladies and gentlemen, when localities comprise, and we do, 50% of all state general funds, in other words, 50% of all state general fund dollars are appropriated to localities to provide state-mandated services, including public education. Doesn't portend well for the next session and your budgets. So we need to tell the story, going back to the beginning, we have to tell the story that we're not only going to wrestle with state budget cuts, but we're going to wrestle with the compounding effect of local reductions. And our legislators and the new governor need to understand this very, very well. So my plea to you is that when you're meeting with your legislators and you're meeting with the governor-elect, please remind them that in addition to reacting to their budget cuts, that you'll also be instituting significant local general fund revenue budget cuts. And that, like them, you can no longer lightly hold public education harmless. I spoke to the GFOA folks a couple weeks ago, and it was very interesting because their concern, in addition to the sad state of the numbers, was how do we begin explaining the problem? And I've had a lot of sidebar conversations with you. This conference has been very, very useful and helpful to me in thinking that through. Because I'm concerned, and you allay my fears, and a lot of folks don't appreciate how bad it actually is. In other words, the state's going to cut public education, and local leaders are going to cut public education, but for some saving grace. So just in closing, just a couple of rhetorical questions to think about. It's based on the survey results in our conversations. Localities are going to reduce local school funding. What we've heard from you all at this conference and at this conference is local leaders want flexibility to manage the state cuts. We're now interpreting that to mean to seek relief from particular state mandates. And that's a difficult proposition because that question means different things to different people. Different people have different answers to mandates they would like to roll back. But we do want to maintain some flexibility. Revenues, as Senator Colgan said yesterday, state revenues, don't count on it. Local revenues, property tax increases if you're able. In our meeting with the governor, President-elect Bradshaw indicated to the governor right out of the box, Governor, those localities that can raise taxes may, but there are a whole heck of a lot of localities that are unable to raise taxes in this environment because of their local economies. And so please explain that to the legislators as well. VACo again is supporting a local option increase in the sales and use tax, again, local option. And we also want to push, obviously, for equal tax authority. But as Senator Colgan said yesterday, the prospects of that are not terribly bright. Lastly, will there be new federal stimulus dollars for public education? I don't think we can count on that. Obviously, the Congress took some action with extending unemployment benefits last week. They may revisit and provide more additional funding for Medicaid, but there's a huge question mark about additional dollars for public education. That's my presentation. Thank you for your time. I'm sorry it's not better news, but we have to work together to explain to our legislators and our governor our problems in addition to their problems. Thank you very much.